Blog Talk Radio.
Namaste, folks. This is Andrew Fisher, host of Nature of Reality Radio. It is January 28th, 2015. This show normally broadcasts from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every Wednesday to expose the true and false nature of reality for what it is and what it isn't. And today on the show, we're going to have David Kane and Riki. I believe that is his wife. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do see area code 416 in the queue. If that is you, I will get you on no later than 10 after the hour. We're going to be talking about monatomic elements today, also known as Ormus. Haven't heard the word Ormus much. It seems like monatomic is the word most people use, even though it's more of a mouthful than Ormus. It seems to be the word that most people use for some reason. I am somewhat familiar with it. I remember Jim Marr's presentation I saw him give. He talked a lot about how monatomic gold, how it's used, and the chemistry and physics behind it, and how he thinks the war in Iraq had something to do with secrets involving monatomic gold and other things. But we're going to have, like I said, David Kane and Riki on the show to talk about the science behind monatomic elements, also known as Ormus. There's 44 elements, at least 44 elements that have been observed in the Ormic state. I guess just for the sake of making sure my show can go 2 hours, I'll have them name all of those elements. If there's any elements that seem like an eye popper, I guess we'll talk about each one in greater detail. But first, as usual, we will start with the news courtesy of Alex Jones and company at InfoWars. Hashtag tweet like a feminist. Social justice warriors get hilariously trolled. The new hashtag going viral on Twitter. That is hashtag tweet like a feminist. So the social justice warriors, the people that want justice, they're the ones that are getting trolled by the trolls. I'm assuming that's what this article is talking about. Don't really have time to get into this article to get all the details here, but it shouldn't come as too much of an astonishment that people who care about social justice are going to be getting trolled, because everybody knows that one troll making one outrageous comment can ruin an entire conversation in a chat room or a comments page, and because people are like that, they'll let one little thing disturb them. It's absolutely sad and pathetic, but the powers that be are aware of that, and that's why they have trolls who they do pay to troll. They do actually pay them to do that. The government does, to troll people that are fighting for freedom and justice, so it doesn't surprise me. If anybody wants to check it out, again, it's hashtag tweet like a feminist. Find out what this is all about. Hashtag that, see what it is. Next article. Oh, this is nothing new. Department of Homeland Security relaunches See Something, Say Something campaign. The relaunch produced a few comical tweets in response. Well, I really know that this is being relaunched as much as it has been going on for forever. The Department of Homeland Security cares nothing about security. They care nothing about your safety. I mean, if you connect the dots, why does the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, exist? Why? Because of 9/11. Well, 9/11 was an inside job, therefore the Department of Homeland Security's existence is unjustified. Need I say more? Why don't the common people act like they understand it? Oh yeah, because the common people are apathetic and fearful and don't feel like they want to do anything because they can't handle the truth. It's a sad fact of life, but the Department of Homeland Security is just trying to keep people in a state of fear and suppressed consciousness by having everybody act like snitches, and if you see something, say something, even if it is so minor. It's all about fear and putting people in a state of helplessness and such. So don't go along with it. I mean, if someone victimizes you, if you're the victim of a crime, then you have every right to snitch on them. Not that that's really snitching. That's getting justice for someone who made you a victim. I mean, some people, like George Kavaslis, say justice is glorified revenge. But, I mean, you got to understand, at some point, if you don't seek justice, if you don't sue people, among other things, then they're going to think they can get away with anything. So you have to fight back, and sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. All right, next article. This is red-linked. Bill Gates calls for global government. Billionaire claims world government badly needed to save the earth. Yes, this is Bill Gates incredibly stupid, or is he in on the New World Order conspiracy to use vaccines to depopulate the earth and such? And, it seems so counterintuitive that Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft, would be so stupid as to as to not realize that he's doing evil things with the vaccines and all, and now he's talking about a global government, and I'm sure by that he does not mean a republic government that like the founding fathers wanted. He's referring to a global totalitarian government that the New World Order Illuminati bloodlines want. I wonder if Bill Gates is under demonic possession. Wouldn't surprise me at all. All right, next article. School forces elementary students to pull pants down for poop inspection. Youngers partially strip-searched and hunt for serial pooper. Wow. Okay. Let me make it clear that if this is a public school, this is a violation of students' rights. Students have the right to refuse to be searched like this. Well, wait a minute, aren't they kids? Don't kids have fewer rights than adults? No. Kids, adolescents, teenagers, adults, doesn't matter how old you are, we're all children of the Creator, also known as God, also known as Source, also known as infinite consciousness. Whatever you call it, it's all the same entity. It's the only entity that can grant rights. Again, Constitution does not give you rights. It states rights you already have. The Creator, God, Source, infinite consciousness, whatever you call it, it's the only entity that can grant rights, and so it doesn't matter what age you are, because all people, regardless of their age, are children of the Creator, and the Creator gave you the rights. Now, it does go without saying that children, because of the need to develop, parents, if the totality of the circumstances requires it, do have some leeway in restricting and taking away the rights of their kids if it is necessary for the development of the child. However, schools do not have that authority, and the only reason schools are being able to get away with violating students' rights like this is because we're apathetic and have fallen for the lie that students have no rights. And let me make it clear, if they can brainwash society into thinking that students have fewer rights than adults, then they can eventually take that into a stepping stone procedure to take away the rights of everybody, and we don't want that now, do we? So act like you understand that children have fewer rights than adults, and students have the rights to refuse to pull their pants down for poop inspections. Wow, Alex Jones, you and your friends at InfoWars have really outdone yourself by putting this. Well, no, you never outdo yourself, because you love your publicity from fear-mongering, don't you? Well, I don't think your fear-mongering is as detrimental to society as some people think it is, but hey, sometimes maybe I think there is some truth to what John Nicholson said when I had him on his show, that the reason Alex Jones will not let him on his show, John Nicholson, on his show, is because Alex is so obsessed with the publicity he gets from fear-mongering that he doesn't have time to have people like John who offer solutions. Whatever, I'm digressing. A couple more articles here. Israel and Hezbollah prepare for war. Generals say Israel faces greatest existential threat since establishment of the state. Well, Israel, it's a small country, but it's the head of so much evil. That's where the Rothschild family, the Rothschilds are the number one Illuminati bloodline family. They created the Zionist movement, which masquerades as a Jewish movement to further their agenda. Anti-Semitic does not mean anti-Jewish. It means anti-Arab, but it's been stereotyped to mean anti-Jewish, and they call people anti-Semitic if they talk about Rothschild Zionism and such, and the B'nai B'rith and organizations like that were designed to discredit people who try to expose Rothschild Zionism. Well, I'm going to expose it because it needs to be exposed. David Icke says it's the elephant in the room. Rothschild Zionism is so many people in government are Rothschild Zionists, and Israel is the headquarters of that. Star David on the Israel flag, definitely not a Jewish symbol. It's a symbol for Saturn, which is a symbol for Satan. Well, it's not a bad symbol, but the Illuminati bloodlines have made it a bad symbol, and it's meant to symbolize Saturn and not the Jewish religion as we're led to believe. So Israel and Hezbollah preparing for war. Yes, if I'm forced to keep a close eye on one over the other, I would have to keep a closer eye on Israel than Hezbollah, because that's where the Rothschilds are. All right, 3 more articles here. Obese model hailed as a good example for women. If chronic illnesses linked to obesity were something to be proud of, yes, I don't really think how fat you are should mean any more or less difference than how good or bad a role model you are. But, I mean, some might say it's counterintuitive because skinny women are seem to be the ones in society who are the more often than not the role models. But I don't know. I don't think I need to spend too much time on this. Next article. Special report. Vaccine death toll rises. CDC refuses to revise vaccine guidelines as it turns cover for big pharma. Yes, vaccines, as I mentioned with Bill Gates, they're not designed to help us. They're designed to poison us. They contain all sorts of toxins in them. Again, you can listen to my interview with Leslie Manookian if you want to learn all about vaccines. We go into that in great detail. It's a sensitive subject, but it's an important subject to discuss. One final article here. UK government announces plan to remotely control vehicles. State to seize control of cars via Wi-Fi sensors to reduce traffic congestion and global warming. global warming. There is no global warming. It's just an Illuminati conspiracy to brainwash us into thinking we need to give our rights up to save the Earth because we're harming the Earth. No, we're not harming the Earth. Well, the powers that be are harming the Earth, but not the general public to such a great extent. And, well, if you don't want the state to take control of your cars, get a car from the 50s or 60s that doesn't have electronics. Downside to that is it may not be so easy to repair it in this day and age. But, hey, if you don't want the government to control your stuff, try to stay away from electronics and get into nature, among other things. But in the chat room here, I see Sean Cohen is here, and Sun T, you're also there. I'll try to get in the chat room every so often on the show. But without further ado, area code 416. First of all, let me get some water here because my throat's really dry. All right. Area code 416, is this Dave and Ricky? You are on the air.
Hello, Andrew. How are you doing?
I'm doing awesome. Is Ricky there too?
No, unfortunately, Ricky can't be available here this evening, so you're stuck with me.
All right, that's okay. Just give me a second here. I need to get to your website so I can use that as a guide throughout the show. But let's anything you want to say to start off the show, because it sounds like you want to say something.
Well, yeah, it's just interesting listening to the news there. There's so many different aspects of everything that needs to be covered, and people just got to keep looking, reading, and so on. One thing I came across, what seems to be relatively new, if anyone's interested, there's something called Tetrionics 101, and it looks like this fellow in Australia has literally figured out how to map matter, or how to build models of matter, everything from the quark up. So I came across this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I watched it twice, and he's added more material, and this looks like it could possibly be the most interesting stuff ever posted. To me, anyway, but probably to a lot of other people. It gives you a backdrop whereby you can start to check whether the leading edge mathematics is correct or not, because there's never been anything for it to be balanced against, and this kind of creates a tool now where you can check your mathematics. Very interesting stuff. He put out a little video called Tetrionics 101. It's an Australian fellow. I don't remember his name, but if you Google that site, it's really interesting stuff. But anyway, that was all. It's relatively new, and some people may be interested in that.
Okay. Thanks. I guess we'll get right to the crux of the interview, the Ormus, also known as Monatomic. Well, first of all, I hardly ever hear the word Ormus anywhere, but it seems like more people use the word monatomic, even though it seems like more of a mouthful to say monatomic than Ormus. Where did the word Ormus come from, and do you have any idea why people don't use it anywhere near as much as they use the word monatomic?
Well, I guess it depends, on where you are, because we in the Ormus forums and that use it all the time. Monoatomics don't get used very much. What it is, essentially, Ormus comes from a term that was created by David Hudson. It's an acronym, and ORME meant orbitally rearranged monoatomic elements. And I don't know where the U.S. came from, but so they just sort of, it's a general name that a lot of people use now that are working with this stuff. And, that's where it came from. It's also called white powder gold, and there's a white powder gold forum that follows it. And there's a lot of names for it. Back in the past, the Egyptians called it showbread, and that appears in the Bible, in the Old Testaments, and they called it manna. And today they call it Ormus or monoatomic, or white powder gold. So, all the terms, I come across them pretty well equally, I guess. But anyway, so that's the designations for it. So whichever area or place you're looking into, Arab scripture called it Mifkist. And in English that was spelled M-F-K-S-T. So, all the cultures are aware of this stuff to one degree or another. And it's been around a long time. But anyway, so whatever, if you prefer monoatomics, that's fine with me.
All right, I'll just use the word Ormus, I guess, because, like I said, it's less of a mouthful.
Yeah.
You say it's before we get into detail as to what exactly it is, let's start off with the state of matter issue. Solid, liquid, gas, plasma, and Ormus? Well, it appears that the powers that be are engaging in a conspiracy to cover up the fact that this is a fifth state of matter, because you never hear about this in any of the school textbooks or college textbooks, for that matter, and probably a lot of encyclopedias don't even mention it. So why are they trying to keep this out of the general public's knowledge?
Well, if you retain the knowledge is power. If you retain the knowledge, you retain the control. I mean, it's always the same scenario over and over and over again, and it doesn't matter what it's with. If you retain the knowledge, you retain the control. But it's getting out there, and like, I'm absolutely not an expert in chemistry. I did not have a background in chemistry. But some of the things that become apparent are that the behaviors of this material are different than anything that we're really used to. One of the best ways we have to describe Ormus is that it's like you were trying to explain wind to a 5-year-old. It's invisible. You can't show them a box of wind, but you can teach them about the effects, and you can teach them about wind by the effects. So that's how we kind of learn about Ormus, because we learn from its effects, because it's chemically neutral. Like the fifth state of matter seems to be materials that are chemically neutral. Like the inert gases are already in their Ormic state. They will not chemically bond with other substances. So when it goes into normal analytical equipment, it doesn't measure anything, because our analytical equipment measures energy exchanges, and inert materials don't do that. So the inert form of other elements of the periodic table, we call them Ormic, or essentially inert. But what seems to happen is that these materials are actually physically part of our construction. And again, the way we describe these things, it's a hard thing to describe it. If you consider that our normal telecommunication system requires the telephone poles to hold the wires up. They're not the poles are not consumed by the system, but they need to be there to facilitate. So the Ormic materials in us, in living material, needs to be there to facilitate, but because it's chemically neutral, it does not get consumed by the being, the entity, the animal, the plant. So it sort of makes sense that we have those types of materials for our internal communication system to function.
All right, one more quick thing. I heard you say it's known by the name manna. Now, anybody who's seen that episode of Ancient Aliens might remember they hypothesized that manna, well, they acted like that book, The Manna Machine, that I don't know the author's names, but they said that they diagrammed what the manna machine would look like, and they used it to create some sort of a seaweed-like substance that astronauts in the modern era would eat to survive on for long periods of time. But they hypothesized that the manna machine made some sort of a seaweed food substance for the people in the Exodus that were walking the desert for many, many years, and that was their food source, manna. So do you think maybe that Ormus was the manna in the story of the Exodus?
Yeah, very likely. Another curiosity that's actually in Exodus in the Bible was when Moses went up to collect the tablets. The Israelites collected their gold. They fashioned a golden calf. And Exodus 32, verse 20 says exactly, Moses smashed the calf, he burned the calf to a powder, he put the powder on the water, and he made the Israelites drink it. And that's literal. Everybody's trying to read something else into that. The Catholics try to say it was a punishment for the Jews, but Moses was raised by the Egyptian royals, so I guess he was party to some of their alchemical knowledge, which was retained by the royals and by the priests, and they made this stuff for themselves. I mean, they even have a hieroglyph that denotes the white powder of gold, and it looks like a little dish from the side with a high cone of powder. And Lawrence Gardner was the guy who was looking at this archaeologically, and on our website there's a link to Gardner's thing. He wrote a book called Lost Secrets of the Sacred Ark, and he also did a 1-hour video which is on YouTube around the middle 90s, And it gives an interesting historical, perspective to some of this. So, it's been there, and there's various other things through the Bible that talks about this. And like in the Bible, I think gold is mentioned 470 times or something like this. But if you start to look at where it's mentioned in the Bible and consider that they're possibly talking about the white powder of gold for enlightenment in life, and substitute that meaning for a lump of metal, then certain things start to change the character of what they actually mean. Like when Jesus was born, they gave him frankincense, gold, and myrrh. Now, what could be more useless than giving a gold brick to a baby? But if they supplied him with white powder gold, that's something that would help to open his mind for the job that he had ahead of him. So there's lots of little things in there. When you start to look at it, I term it through the eyes of Ormus. Certain things start to, come out of the fog and start to clear up, So it's interesting stuff. I mean, it's around us today. It was around us in the past, and there's, more and more evidence of this everywhere because, when you give it to plants and pets, you can see the differences. In animals, you can usually see it overnight. In plants, you'll see it even in the middle of the winter. It takes about 3 weeks for indoor plants. So the thing is that plants and animals don't lie, so it completely circumvents the whole placebo effect and all of the time and wasted effort and money that they keep spending on placebo effect, which will never give any result. So I don't know. It just... Ormus starts to blend into so many aspects of how we live. And by understanding it, it really opens up a very interesting series of perspectives to like everything that we do. And again, like when you say with the so-called overlords, they know about this stuff. And again, they try to retain this knowledge for themselves. So, if you go back even farther, if anyone's familiar with Zecharia Sitchin, and his books, the 12th planet and the end of days and so on, he talks about the Anunnaki coming to Earth from the planet Nibiru, and he spent his entire career translating ancient languages, and he translated apparently thousands of Sumerian tablets. And that's where the stories of the Anunnaki come from, but because it was so far out in left field when he did his first book in the early 70s, he wrote them as science fiction books. And one of the things he talks about in the first book is that the Anunnaki came to Earth to mine gold because their atmosphere was depleted. And that's supposedly a direct translation from the Sumerian tablet in his book, The 12th Planet. And I puzzled over that for a long time, and then bang, it dropped on me like a ton of bricks one day, because when I was flying out west and you're looking at clouds, we're told that clouds are water vapor. Yet every other instance where we deal with water vapor, whether it's a pot or a kettle or looking at the water through an irrigation system or a golf course, when you look through that water, it's gray. But yet when you look at clouds, they're white. And what we believe is that white natural clouds are actually Ormus precipitating out of the moisture in the atmosphere, whether it's a combination of the electromagnetic circumstances of the planet or the electrical charge in the atmosphere or possibly ultraviolet light. But it's a combination of contributions that cause this stuff to appear, and that's why it's white. When we make Ormus, we end up with exactly the same beautiful, fluffy, white cloud material, and it doesn't matter whether we extract it from salts or we extract it from, crushed crystals, or you end up with the same stuff. And, we've seen it now from quite a few different materials, or magnetite, from rose quartz crystals, from iolite, from jasper, from copper powder. And, a friend of ours, he pondered it and he thought, what if this stuff is undifferentiated matter and possibly becomes everything that's here, depending on the symphony of frequencies that, makes you and makes me and makes a brick a brick. It's hard to say, but it sure has interesting possibilities,
Yes, and since you mentioned his name, I now have no choice but to bring up something that I've been on a mission to expose many times on my show. By the way, we'll get into the science behind Ormus in a little bit. I know the listeners might be a little impatient. We haven't got there, but hey, I got to bring this up because if I don't, I'm going to have it hanging over my head. You mentioned Zecharia Sitchin. I don't know what gives you the idea that the book The 12th Planet was science fiction. He was very true to his heart about what he was writing, and his first three books were extremely accurate, and I know that because Akashic Records...
No, I didn't say it was science fiction. I said that's how he had to present it.
Oh, okay.
Back 1971, how could you present... Like Star Trek was the same thing. You had to present these things that way, or they'd lock you up.
Okay, well, he was very true to his heart about what he believed. So, I don't really think he was trying to present as science fiction. But the point is, Akashic Records reader Andrew Barsis did say his first three books were extremely accurate. There is some stuff about Zecharia Sitchin being a Illuminati and CIA disinformer. That is all bunk and bogus. I've debunked it many times, and Andrew Barsis told me how that's all a lie. I'm not going to get into it on this show in great detail, but I have on other shows. And however, Bartis did say that Sitchin was wrong about the reason the Anunnaki wanted the gold. It was not to shield the atmosphere of Nibiru. It was actually to lure entities to planet Earth, because the Anunnaki, they didn't come here on a mission. They were actually lured to Earth by an entity that was residing in the Middle East area of planet Earth. And they came here, they were lured here, and then they genetically engineered humans, and then they were mining the gold to lure entities to Earth. That's what Andrew Bartis said, and I guess it was actually monatomic gold that they were using to do that. Now that I brought that to your attention, do you think maybe you could go along with that?
Actually, I don't think so, because look at it this way. If our natural clouds are Ormus precipitating out of the moisture in the atmosphere, and they were from an area where they were having something that had caused their system to break down, then they would require gold in order to literally restructure or rebuild or repair their atmosphere. And look what we're doing to our own atmosphere here today. It's a very thin little envelope of air, and if we damage this, that's the last of us. So maybe this could be a very important thing, because absolutely everything that lives requires these Ormic materials. And crystals, stones, we found some of our research has gotten really interesting, because we've actually crushed down several crystals, as I mentioned, and have extracted Ormic material out of it. And one day we were doing a presentation at a native group in Ontario, and they had just had sweat lodge. And I'm thinking, well, man, we can extract a lot of Ormus out of ash from wood ash. We can extract a lot of Ormus out of volcanic ash. And I thought, well, here's a great thing here, because what happens when they do the burn on the stone for sweat lodge, they'll burn perhaps 100 pounds of stones that their shaman will select. They have a particular way to burn these, and they'll burn them for 3 to 3.5 hours, and then they will take the stones and put them in the sweat lodge, which is generally quite a small, closed area, and these stones will then heat the sweat lodge very significantly, and after these stones burn for 24 to 36 hours, they will then be left ash. And it doesn't matter whether you're burning granite or river rocks or anything, there's nothing left of these stones except this beautiful white ash. So I thought, well, gee, maybe I can save a lot of pounding and grinding problems here and see if I can get some of the ash from the fire. So we did ask this group, and they said, absolutely, no problem. And we took this ash back and we performed the chemistry on it, and we got absolutely nothing out of the ash from these stones. And what has happened is that the natives' protocol of burning these stones pretty well takes it up to about 13 to 1600 degrees, which parallels volcanic temperatures. And these are the processes that we used when we extracted it from the rose quartz, et cetera, et cetera. But what they're doing is they're extracting all of the Ormic material from maybe 100 pounds of stone over the 24 to 36 hours in sweat lodge, and it's all being released. And when people are attending Sweat Lodge, they're now breathing this concentrated Ormic material that's released by their process, and it's hot, and the pores of the skin are open, and they're also absorbing this through the skin. And this is why you're having these remarkable healings and remarkable spiritual experiences. This stuff is there, and the more we work with it, the more we're learning about it. So the Ormic materials are extremely important to all life. Without them, there is no life. And this is inextricably intertwined with water, because we've also believed that Ormic materials come from springs. And these certain atmospheric conditions or ultraviolet light or whatever will cause Ormus gold, which comes out of the ground in spring water, to settle out. Some of it will change to particulate gold, and this will drop to the bottom of these springs and then these creeks. And what happens is these are actual living crystals because they will grow. They will attract more material from the water. They will also attract material from the air. And this is why streams have these nuggets. They continue to grow. They continue to build the metallic crystallized gold. But they're alive. And part of what we're looking at, we're thinking, well, if Ormus is essential for consciousness and crystals grow, and these things must be alive. So if something grows and has consciousness, it must be alive. And anything in nature, if it's alive, it has a predator. So we started searching to find out, and what we did is we found a predator for gold. And it's a bacteria called Firmicutes radiodurans, and it actually eats gold and defecates something a little bit lower on the periodic table. And it's a natural bacteria that they found in the gold mines in South Africa. And in the middle 90s in the U.S., they had an infestation of Firmicutes radiodurans in their Fort Knox repository. So what they did is they irradiated the gold supply at somewhere at around 3,500 times the level that would kill us. And then they took samples of radiodurans back to the lab, and radiodurans had been blasted to pieces and come back in the next day, and what they found was that in 24 hours, radiodurans had reassembled its DNA and was alive again. Now that got us wondering, like, how in the heck can this happen? And we started digging into that, and what we found was we came up with an idea, a theory. It's a theory. What we think happens is that anywhere that there is a concentrated metal, regardless of what metal, there is essentially an Ormic cloud around that metal that seems to travel with it. And it's in a state of flux, and the Ormic material on occasion will change back into the metallic material, and the metallic material on occasion will turn back into the Ormic material. We don't know the exact parameters or conditions for that yet. All right, but so we looked at that and we thought, all right, you're not allowed to take the gold out of Fort Knox, obviously, but the Ormic cloud, the consciousness, accompanied the samples of radiodurans back to the lab and retained the knowledge for it to reorganize its DNA, because there is no explanations for this. One step farther, we started looking into other stuff we'd come across. In the 1930s, there was a man named Galen Hieronymus, and somehow he came up with an idea, and he put a copper sheet on the roof of his house, a copper sheet in the basement workshop, and he connected the two with a wire, and he planted seedling plants in grow trays on top of the copper sheet. And these plants grew to fruition, absolutely normally, in complete darkness. So he did this in the early 30s, and he did this for 7 or 8 years. And, continued getting the same effect. And he ended up going in 1940 and applied for a U.S. patent for what he called eloptic energy, which was a combination of electrical-optical. And he believed that light was hitting the copper sheet on the roof, somehow changing electrically down the wire and back to a light frequency that the plants could recognize in the basement. And again, they grew properly in the dark. We haven't had a chance to duplicate this, partly because we don't have any dark spots in our house. But it's on the agenda, and if anybody's welcome to give this a shot, we'd be happy to supply the material. But anyway, so what we found from him and his eloptic energy is that something else was going on here. And now we believe that actually what was happening was the Ormic cloud accompanying the copper may be the activator of what we call photosynthesis. We think that photosynthesis is the possible excitation of the copper to the Ormic state that allows plants to live, and not necessarily the light itself. See, the problem with the Ormus stuff is the more we work with it, the more it brings into question everything that we've been taught. All right? Again, we researched back from that a little bit. About 300 years ago, somebody in Europe, I believe, came up with the idea of copper sheathing a plow. So they would do this, and they would run through, and they would plow their fields. And what they found is that when a field was plowed with a copper-sheathed plow, which is a very soft metal, they would get about a 20 to 30% better yield in crops, less insect problems, less disease problems, less fungus, larger plants, and larger yields. So this became a practice in North America, a practice in wherever they were farming, because it's been around a long time. And what we think was occurring was as they plowed the field, there was little particles of copper breaking off through the field, and because they would wear out. It was a common thing to have a guy who would resheathe your copper plow every couple of years or whatever, depending on how much plowing you did. So it was just a regular medieval practice, a business, you know. But anyway, what we think's happening is as these particles broke off through the field, they literally got distributed. Now, we don't know whether the Ormic field around that particle of copper was an inch or a foot or 5 feet. We just don't know. But something was happening that was causing this to happen with the concentration of another metal, and the behavior indicates that this Ormic cloud is a reasonable possibility. So, you know, the more we dig into it, the more we find things that correspond with a lot of these things, you know. Anyway.
Thanks. And I guess we might as well get into detail now in regards to the science of what Ormus actually is. And I guess the best way to do this is to compare and contrast Ormus with the other elements, solid, liquid, gas, and plasma, the other states of matter, So I guess compare and contrast Ormus with those other 4 states of matter so we can get a better idea of what Ormus actually is.
Well, all right, any element of the periodic table, depending on its temperature, can occur as a solid, liquid, or a gas. Everybody's familiar with that. When they take something down to near absolute zero, they call that a plasma state. And when they get within about 4 degrees absolute zero, which is minus 269 down to minus 273 Celsius, they get very peculiar behaviors. Again, so that's kind of just left. All right, that is now the plasma state. Okay, I have conjectures with that. As the more we learn about Ormus, I think what they're doing is they're inducing an Ormic state because the temperature is reaching points where the material is virtually becoming inert, which is the natural condition for something in the Ormic state, is to be inert. So the temperature is inducing the inert state. Anyway, I think that's what's going on, but, you know, we don't have anybody to corroborate this yet. But who knows? I mean, it's reasonable. But anyway, so when something is in its Ormic state, it is chemically neutral. It will not react. So if David Hudson made white powder gold from 99.999% pure gold, they took it in 1979 to, what's the university in New York State where they make all the Corning University. And they did an analysis in about 9 different pieces of equipment there. And they analyzed this white powder gold, and the analysis come back on all the equipment and said that what he'd given them was 100% of nothing, even though there was something physically there. So they were incapable of analyzing this stuff. in 1981, they got an analysis from something called a carbon arc spectrographic analyzer. And what they did is they burned this gold. A carbon arc is just it's a welding arc with a little tiny cup in it and the two electrodes together, and they put the white powder gold in there, and they struck the arc, and as this burns, it gases off. At the time, they believed any substance on the planet was tested within 15 seconds, and that's what it was. When they put this stuff in, Hudson gave them information that had come from the Russian Academy of Sciences, and they said to burn your material for 5 minutes. So what they did is they burned it, and within 15 seconds, that nothing but white powder gold, it read iron, silica, and aluminum. All right, this was a sample they'd made from his property in Arizona. At 70 seconds, that particular sample started to read platinum. About 90 or 95 seconds, it read palladium. About 120-odd seconds, it started to read ruthenium, and then iridium, and then rhodium. And at 300 seconds, 5 minutes, it started to read osmium. So these were all materials that were in the sample, but could not be analyzed because they didn't have the knowledge that these things, first of all, existed, and secondly, that they could read them. So what they did is they burned them in this carbon arc, and as they gassed off, they were able to read this, through a spectrographic analyzer, I guess, with a light beam or something going through the vapors. So this was how they got an analysis in 1979. But the Russians all the information came from them. They'd been working on this stuff from at least the 50s and 60s, possibly before that. But they just had a different system in that country because everybody didn't have to turn out a marketable product and get a check by Friday night. So the funding of their system allowed, research for the sake of research. So in a lot of ways, they kind of went ahead of here, and, other ways we went ahead of them. But, that was just the way it was. Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks. And the thing about Ormus that I want to talk about in terms of something Jim Marrs talked about in one of his presentations, where he talked about if you put Ormus on one part of a scale and then, I don't remember what he said, put on the other side of the scale, but it was as if putting Ormus on the scale made it lighter or something like that. Do you have any idea what he's talking about there? Could you elaborate on that?
I'm not familiar with Jim Marrs. I'm aware of him. I've heard of him. I'd love to get together with him one of these days. But, Hudson came out with information that something in the Ormic state lost 4/9 of its weight. All right? And, one of my fascinations, I've always been fascinated with levitation and what have you. And I dig into things on that as well, again, looking for these behaviors and properties. And they start to show up again because insects, for example, bumblebees and various beetles, mathematically cannot fly because they weigh too much for the size of their wings. And yet they fly. And one of the things that there's a man called Viktor Grebennikov. He was a Russian entomologist. And there's a chapter from one of his books available. He is credited with something called the cavity structural energy theory. And what he found is that the exoskeletons of insects are row upon row of hexagonal chambers, and there's a very good chance that many insects line these chambers with concentrated Ormic, at least iridium and possibly other materials. Because what they found is from these beetle wings and that, they will actually lift up, they'll actually levitate, they'll actually move around. When you bring various magnetic forces to them, they can push these wings around. But Grebennikov at the time didn't divulge the specific type of beetle, but now there's been a lot of people digging into this, and there's some interesting little pictures on YouTube of these wings responding to both static fields and electrical fields and so on. However, if this is correct, which I think it is, and an insect has these chambers lined with, for example, Ormus iridium, then the insect actually weighs less then they find, and it is activated. We're not sure by what, but one of the things that we're looking at right now, Hutchinson, I'm sure everybody's heard of him, has levitated all sorts of things with sound frequencies. What if the sound frequency of an insect's beating wings activated the anti-gravitational properties of these Ormic materials? Because these are very ancient materials, and some of these insects, cockroaches, go back, 250 million years, they believe. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that we're right on the forefront of that makes sense that nobody's looking into. So, I mean, that's one example. Another example that we found is that when you're cooling some of these Ormic materials down, they actually show a levitation effect at 105 degrees Fahrenheit. And lo and behold, the body temperature of most birds is 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Another coincidence? The thing is, there's too many coincidences,
Well, I don't think it's a coincidence so much as it is synchronicity. But, because there is no coincidence.
Yeah.
You believe that everything happens for a reason? There is no such thing as a coincidence?
Well, sure, I do. I mean, I have no doubt. I know nature wastes nothing. Nature is ultimately efficient. So I know these things that we're starting to observe. The only reason they haven't been observed is because we're not paying attention. Nature does not make mistakes. I mean, it just does not. So once you take a few of these things, in what they should be, and just let them be fixed things, then you don't have to spend all your time conjecturing on your tools. You have the time to go ahead and do the investigation without always questioning your tools, But, I mean, it's like all the DNA in human cells. I mean, 97% of the DNA in our cells is replicated from cell to cell, generation to generation, and they call it junk DNA. Well, there is no junk in nature. This is all there for a reason. And, personally, with Sitchin and so on, I believe that we were probably altered from some sort of either people that were here or people that were brought here, and the alteration was done because they required minors. I mean, if the Anunnaki had 1,000-year life cycles, I'm sure their women wouldn't have children till they were 200 years old. I mean, it works. Those proportions work, whether it's life on Earth or whether it's 100-year-old turtles or it's insects that reproduce every 2 weeks. The progeny, the offspring, is based on the life cycle of the individual. And Sitchin talks about these people having 1,000-plus year life cycles. So if they needed people to mine gold on the Earth for whatever their reasons, and they had life cycles that were those lengths, they couldn't produce the people themselves. So it made more sense to them to, alter what was here if they had the technology to do it, and get their job done, right? It's not much difference than us using pack horses. I mean, they don't live that long. They live 20 years, whatever. So we would use those, rather than carry all these loads of stuff up over the mountains to wherever we live. We would use animals, and that way you can replace them quicker and quicker and get your job done. It's a very reasonable philosophy, So we got to use our abilities to reason and our powers to think and put yourself in their shoes and how would you go about solving this problem, For what?
Right. Right. I want to cover a couple things here. I noticed I wrote in the description here, Ormic state contains high-spin Cooper paired electrons. Is that supposed to be the word Cooper or copper? Why is it Cooper? What's the significance behind Cooper paired and high-spin? Go into both those subjects, please.
What they believe happens is when something enters the Ormic state, it is paired. And there is two, they call it a Cooper pair, I guess, after the name of whoever it was, put forward this theory. But what they believe happens is one electron spins clockwise, the other one spins anti-clockwise, and when they do this, they create a field around it. And they call this a Meissner field. So Meissner was the guy who proposed this field structure and so on. I mean, everything on that scale has not been seen. However, that's part of why in the beginning I mentioned the tetraionics, because now I think we have a way that we can positively show the models of the Ormic material and all these other things, and Cooper behavior, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so once these two things spin, they generate this Meissner field, all right? And it is a field that shuts out external influences in that little bubble from other electromagnetic, magnetic, electrical fields. It kind of hits this little bubble, and inside that bubble, it's a different situation. It's superconductive. It has nothing in there that impairs the movement of anything through the field. Okay? So in that condition, Hudson, again, in some of his work, they found that people taking Ormus, the material seemed to collect on the telomeres on the ends of the DNA and allowed this Meissner field to take place around DNA. And when this happened, they were able to measure the electrical activity within the DNA, which they thought might increase. What they found was that the internal electrical activity in the DNA, once it was sequestered from the environment by the Meissner field, increased to over 1 million times what was expected. And they found that DNA in those conditions has the ability to reorganize itself back and produce its original protocol. So DNA that's been damaged can now revert back to its original design protocol. So this is stuff we've seen this physically. For example, when you're putting Ormus M3 on skin cancers, in we say 2 to 10 days, but I've actually seen cancers fall off in 36 hours. And what we think's happening is that once it's applied there, it just allows the DNA producing the tumor to reorient itself back to produce the correct material, which it continues to produce and pushes the tumor out, and then it just drops off. So it's a matter of realizing that these materials are part of us, and we believe that they're also part of our cleanup mechanism, because the Ormic materials, as I say, they're like the telephone poles. These materials facilitate the cleaning up of any damage that we produce. And we produce damaged cells all the time, from everything from radiation to food to toxins, whatever. But we have the ability to clean these up and get rid of them. When we disable that ability to clean it up, for example, today there are over 5 million cell phone ear tumors being serviced, and yet they say it's not caused by cell phones. Well, of course it is. What happens is this physically pushes the Ormic material away, because Ormic material in its pure state is anti-magnetic. Hudson made pure white powder gold from gold, and when you bring a magnet to it, it actually jumps away. You can have it in a jar and it hops across the jar, or on a piece of paper, and you bring a magnet underneath it, it starts jumping away from the magnet. So if materials in this condition are affected by magnetic fields and you bring your cell phone to your ear, it's pushing this stuff away. So you're actually disabling, to one degree or another, the body's ability to clean up the bad cell that just got produced in your cell phone ear. And if it can't clean it up and get rid of it, then it continues, and it's not dead. It can still reproduce itself, although incorrectly. A tumor is a cell reproducing itself incorrectly. And it doesn't matter where it is. That's what it is. So when you disable the cleanup mechanism, and I mean, look at how we're living today. I mean, we got cell phones here and cordless phones there. Anything that transmits interferes with our healing system. And look what's around. There's 2.4 million cell phone towers and relay antennas in the United States today. So it's you can't get away from it. You have to start to become aware of it. People go to bed and sleep with a cell phone beside their bed, a fluorescent curly light bulb beside their bed, and a clock radio, and then they wonder why they get headaches and can't sleep. One of the interesting things we found with the Ormus material, we mixed our Ormus ruby, which is just an extract blend of 3 different salts. And we mixed that with magnesium oil because we wanted that to take it in as a carrier. And what we see now, and we've done this now hundreds of times, people with headaches spray a little bit on their hand, wipe it across their forehead or the back of the head, wherever the headache is, and in 2 minutes it's gone. All we're doing is replacing at least some of the materials that the body's short of, and the body's being made short of it because of the EMFs emitted by these devices we're carrying all the time. There's now blood pictures showing hemoglobin clumping into balls in the blood within 10 seconds of a cell phone going off within 5 feet of the individual. There's a movie called Take Back Your Power, which is out on the net. It's only a year old. And they have blood pictures on there. So the hemoglobin carries our oxygen from our lungs through our blood to the cells, through the blood plasma. And when all this stuff clumps into balls, and you reduce the surface transfer area of these hemoglobin carrying the oxygen by 90%, it can't pass the oxygen to the plasma, to the cells, and the low oxygen level, again, contribute to cancer formation. So that's EMFs. So we've got to start paying attention to what's going on around us because, this is on the way to 50 million cell phone ear tumors. And people need to know about this. And the people that are supposed to be looking after this stuff, man, I don't know what they're doing. They're off playing golf or don't give a damn. But anyway, just for something for people to look into. We go into a lot of that on our website and explain things, but we don't leave people hanging. We put up ideas, and there's things that we can do, and there's things that we know we can do, and there's ways to shield yourself. We wrap all of our bottles in foil before we ship them. And if we have to take a flight, we pack everything in metal tins as well, so it's got a double Faraday shield. We send information with this product as well on how to store it and, how to learn about it and how to respect it and how to look at other things in your life to improve your environment for you and your kids and people you care about and people you don't care about still need to know about it. They've all got function somewhere. Hey, sorry, I get on these little rants.
Oh, but it's okay. We got to do a 2-hour show. You're welcome to take the floor and talk all you want about a subject, elaborate all you want. But one thing I'm sure you can elaborate on here in great detail is it says here 5% of the dry weight of the human brain and nervous system are composed of Ormic elements and perhaps 5% of everything else as well. Ormic elements are essential to the structure and function of all living things. Okay, so... Well, you specifically chose the human brain and the nervous system. I'm guessing you said that because, well, without the brain and nervous system, our bodies would not function. That's what allows our bodies to exist in this third-dimensional realm, the brain and the nervous system, because it's basically the computer system that allows for it. So, but you did say 5% of everything else. Any idea why you would believe that 5%, why 5% of everything would contain Ormic elements to some degree?
Well, that's a supposition. What Hudson did, he went to Safeway and they bought calf's brains and pig brains, and they brought them back to his lab, and they rendered these, and they took them all down, and they extracted the Ormic material, and they were getting a roughly 5% by weight out of the animal's brains. Okay? And that's what that's based on. Now, the thing is, I surmise that close to that percentage is probably available because every single cell in our body has an information transfer system. It has to be fed. It has to be cleaned. So there has to be communications materials available to do that, and the Ormic materials seem to be the facilitators of our internal communications. So I'm assuming that it's probably all the way through us because everything has to be communicated with. I mean, we're a group of trillions and trillions of cells, and they're essentially all, mitochondrial cells working in conjunction with each other. So we're a composite structure of millions of potentially, individual things. So that's why I say that, because there is no other explanation of how your body can communicate. There's just nothing out there. It's new territory, and yet it happens. We know it happens, and they're not investigating these things. Again, the powers that be want control. What they're doing is they're sending people off on these ridiculous tangents. For example, I was reading a thing a while ago there where they had some team examining the genetic makeup of a tumor. So I guess I don't know how many dollars, man hours, and time they spent on this. So they have now mapped the genetic makeup of a tumor. So what? Every tumor going to be different. So what are they going to do now? Map the genetic makeup of 30 million different tumors? Or are they going to just stop them from occurring, which is what they should be doing? A tumor is a side effect of an abnormal condition. And it's time to start looking into what's causing the abnormal condition and start solving the problems instead of, just treating the symptoms. Integrity needs to be reintroduced to our lives because the pursuit of money is going to cause extinction. And it's doing that of everything, So, we look at it through Ormus, but, it's essentially the same thing. It's all the same path. It's just a different way, and, we try to get this information out and present this perspective to people because maybe it can help other people in the path that they've selected to do what they know they need to do. And that's what it's all about. So we investigate everything that we can find that might have any potential to do with the Ormus, so that we can learn more about that, because then we can assist somebody else wherever, whenever. Some we meet, some we don't, some we'll never meet, but it's all done with the intent of the most benevolent outcome for everyone. So that's what motivates us. Ricky and I consider ourselves to be facilitators with the Ormus, because if we can help viable people be more viable and not have to waste their time and talent worrying about a headache or worrying about sore legs simply because they're short of something that should be in their diet, that's what we're doing. The analogy of the elite is, you knock one down and two or three more have to look after them. We believe that probably autism is a cause of the parents being short of Ormic material. Because if the parents don't have the material and it's not available in the production or the communications of the creation of the child, that's what's happening with autism. We're now down to, I think, 1 in 79 births are autistic, but then that requires 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people to look after that autistic child. So it just falls perfectly into the, the Illuminati consciousness of keeping everybody busy. You know what I mean? People aren't watching TV anymore. They need another structure to keep everybody busy so that they don't learn. This is what it's all about.
Yeah, it's a shame. And, one thing I do want to digress for a moment here off the subject of the science behind Ormic elements to talk about how we can get this information out to the public. It's obviously not in the textbooks and all, so could you perhaps offer any suggestions and solutions for how we can better educate the public and the rest of the world about the science of Ormic elements? How do we keep the suppression, how do we stop the suppression of the information?
Yeah, there's more and more people learning about it, and there's more and more things being posted on the internet. Which is good, but like anything else, you have to take it, with a grain of salt as you go along, because in some places information is just incorrect. Most of it's pretty good, though. Most of the people that seem to be involved in the Ormus material seem to be very conscientious people, very conscious, aware people. It's happening. This big shift in consciousness is underway. And so a large part of that's interesting. The other fact is that most people, including us, we're happy to teach people how to make this stuff. We're happy to teach people how to work with this stuff. Part of what came along was what we originally found out with EMFs. because in the beginning we had one of the curiosities of the Ormus is you can apply it to a burn and the pain will stop instantly. And we had a lady that knew this, got a burn in her kitchen, went to the bedroom, put her Ormus on, and it didn't do anything. And, we got talking, and what we found out was that she had a DEC phone base station, cordless phone base station, sitting on her night table, and the Ormus was in the top drawer of the night table, right under the phone without its foil wrapping. And by 2 weeks, it didn't work on the burn. So that was how we started getting onto the fact that this was affected by EMFs. And then we had a few other occasions where this had happened too, by, in one case, proximity to a water heater, which had a very mild field. But over the period of 2 weeks, it was behind a closet on a house in Florida, and it was able to push the Ormus through the sealed bottle, but it was still wrapped in foil, so it didn't get away altogether. It collected on the outside of the bottle against the foil and turned the aluminum foil black on the inside. And the whole bottle was covered with oil because Ormus is an oily substance. So the field actually pushed it through the bottle. So, again, we learn by watching these things, But anyway, in answer to your question, information on the Internet, we have our website up. That's humanagold.com, and we've got some videos on there with me yakking about this and that, and a few other interviews here and there, and information. It's up there for people to learn. We're not up there to sell a product. We didn't expect to be making a product because we thought this was such a great thing that we would be doing trips and teaching people. But everybody seems to be too busy being busy, and they said, well, can you make us some of this? So now we end up making a product because Ricky and I had both retired, and, this was just a really fantastic interest that we started to pursue, and now it's sort of turned into a bit of a business that we hadn't expected, and it's consuming all of our time now. But, it needs to be done. Somebody needs to do it. So anyway, but our videos are up there for people to watch. Enjoy. Phone us if you got questions. We're available. We got information up there. And that's what it's all about. We got a gentleman in Missouri this summer is going to be putting in a 6-acre test field of organic black beans that he grows for one of the organic restaurants in the U.S. We've got several people playing around with it, and everything from gardens to a little bit of greenhouse stuff and so on for plants. There's interesting stuff. We've got some pictures on our videos too, showing how plants have responded to it and so on. But we try and give people something to spark their interest. And if they have an interest in a certain area, we're happy to help as much as we can because, again, there's Ricky and myself, my wife and me, and that's it. And, we're good at reasoning. We're good at figuring things out. But, man, there are only so many hours in the day. And we need more minds and more eyes working on this stuff and learning about it. And, we're happy to help anybody we can at any level because as we help more people, we find we learn more stuff, which that's our thing. That's what we enjoy. So that's what it's about. And I guess our videos up there, I think they're up 400,000 people now have looked at them, and we've ended up sending Ormus all over the place. Tomorrow I'm mailing off to South Africa and Turkey. So people are looking, they're learning, they want answers, they want to know stuff that makes sense. And that's all this is about. So
keep up the good work there. And, I want to get away from the science once more to talk about another subject involving monatomics from a political and geographical perspective. Jim Mars, he did say in that same presentation that he thinks one of the reasons we lied about weapons of mass destruction to invade Iraq was to raid a museum that was in Iraq, and there was materials in that museum that were stolen after the troops raided it and stole stuff, and he believes that information involving monatomic gold was one of the things that was stolen from that museum by the government in order to obtain the secrets behind technologies used in Sumeria and other times from antiquity. Do you think there may be some truth to that idea?
Oh, absolutely. Whether it was specifically for that, I don't know. But the highest levels of the Masonic orders, they're interested in this kind of stuff. It's been around. Solomon paid for his temple with gold that they made from the Dead Sea. Dead Sea salt seems to have the highest amounts of Ormus gold in it, and it's not hard to extract. And then we had a really curious thing happen about 6.5 years ago. We sent some Ormus down to a girl in Brooklyn, and when it got there, the bottom had been blown off our bottle, like perfectly straight, almost like it was cut off with a laser. And these are like, tough polyethylene plastic bottles, food-grade bottles. Anyway, I sent her a replacement, and it arrived exactly the same way. And at the same time, I'd sent 2 bottles from Canada to Finland, and we weren't sure about shipping by air back then, so we shipped them by surface. But it was winter, so it ended up getting routed down through New York, and they arrived in Finland exactly the same way. And what we were able to dig around and find out was that they had put, I guess because of the UN and 9/11 and all that stuff, they had put in what they called a level 2 metal-penetrating X-ray system in the post office. And because our parcels were wrapped up in foil, I guess they couldn't see through it with a regular scanner. So when they put it in and hit it with a level 2, what it did, it blew the bottoms off the bottles. But curiously, what it also did, it changed the white powder, this fluffy white cloud, back into physical gold. So now, in these bottles, when I got the wrapping back, part of the aluminum foil had been turned gold-colored, and there was this goldy-colored sandy residue left in the bottoms of the bottle, and it certainly wasn't there when it left. So we saw that 3 times in a row. So now, I think, thanks to the U.S. Post Office, you can their equipment operates at the frequency that changes white powder gold back into physical gold. There's ways and means, The gold itself as a metal is really sort of a useless thing. But the white powder gold, the gold of life, it's everywhere. It's critical. It's in everything, and it's everywhere. There was... out in the western United States, there's all kinds of rocks out there in the desert here and there, what have you, that get all this white stuff on it. And people said, oh, well, that must be calcium. But, where are you going to get calcium in a desert where it rains a couple of times a year, maybe? The rainwater isn't going to have calcium in it. That doesn't sound likely to me. And yet, over time, these stones build up with thick coatings of this stuff. It looks to me like it's actually Ormus or manna that settles out of the air, and over time it builds up, So we have to see. We can extract it from all kinds of seawater. If you extract the Ormic material and you drop it out of seawater, you get about 1/6 of the volume of a gallon of seawater drops out as maybe 1/7, something like that, drops out as the white precipitate. And the sea covers 71% of the planet. And everything that's in the sea has come down rivers and what have you, and it's from dissolved minerals on the land. So this is the whole thing. And then when you look at the human being, during the Second World War, they used to transfuse filtered seawater for injured soldiers that had lost blood when there was no blood supplies available. It actually saved thousands of lives. So the mineral ratios and amounts in seawater are virtually identical to human blood plasma. If you cry and your tears, you analyze your tears are identical to seawater. That's why you can jump into the ocean and open your eyes. You figure if you stuck your head in a bucket of salt, you would expect it to sting. Look what happens when you put it on a cut. And yet you can jump in the ocean, open your eyes. So the thing is, we're seawater-based creatures, and everything in seawater is in the correct ratio for the human body. This is why when people go to the Caribbean and here and there and whatever, they feel great because they're in the seawater, The primary salt in seawater is magnesium chloride, and you're absorbing that through your skin, which is our natural mechanism to absorb this stuff through our skin. And it dissolves calcium deposits, which are arthritis. So it all just dissolves away. So we mixed our spray. It's half magnesium oil and so on. And lo and behold, we start doing people's backs, and it relaxes everything, and they feel good. And then we had one gal was taking this stuff home and got her hubby to do her back, and he has these gnarly, twisted-up fingers and golf ball-sized knuckles. So he starts doing her back, and within a couple of weeks, his fingers are slowly starting to straighten up, and his golf ball knuckles are starting to disappear. So accidentally, we find out that this combination of Ormus and magnesium oil is starting to dissolve arthritis. So, I mean, now we've seen this hundreds of times. So it's interesting. But people are funny. They know it, they buy it, they use it for a while, and then they go back to enjoying their arthritis. So I don't know. I'll never figure people out. So we just do our best. Certain people will connect, and, God bless them, and God helps them. But, so that's all. We just keep putting things forth, and if the seed, gets a little bit of water, it'll grow. So we're seed sowers.
Yes, we are.
Mm-hmm.
Indeed. And I'd like to talk about specific elements that can be observed in the Ormic state. It says here today at least 44 elements. You know what? If you can actually name all 44 right now, all in a row, can you do that?
I can't. I'd have to dig them up. The stuff that David Hudson worked with were rhodium, iridium, ruthenium, osmium, platinum, palladium, and gold. Then he discovered 4 or 5 more. So all of the metals can be, converted into that form, right? There's another guy in Australia has changed 22 other materials. I'd have to go back through my computer and find the notes, but he has changed. He has a very significant background in electroplating and the electrochemical industry and stuff, and it was always a fascination for him. So he has isolated 22 materials on his own. That was up to 33. I don't know, have you ever heard of something called Brown's gas?
No, I have not.
Okay, Brown's gas is essentially a curiosity, but what it is monoatomic oxygen and monoatomic hydrogen. There was a guy named Yul Brown who in 1959 left Bulgaria, moved to Australia, started a company making what he called Brown's gas welding equipment. And Brown's gas welding equipment is very interesting because he split water at a frequency that gave him monoatomic oxygen and hydrogen, which could pack both into the same container up to 100 pounds pressure. So from 1 liter of water, you could produce 1,850, I think, liters of Brown's gas. And then you could reuse that Brown's gas and run an automobile engine on it. Because what happened, though, it reconstituted back to the water. So you'd introduce the Brown's gas to the engine. You would spark the engine when the piston was at the bottom, and that would create a near-perfect vacuum, which would draw the piston up, and the combustion product was water, back to the same liter of water that you started with. Now that was, he had patents in 31 countries on this stuff in 1977. And he couldn't get backing from the Australian government to develop it farther. He did all his own funding. He sold his own equipment. The Canadian government actually sponsored him, and he was up in Toronto for 3 years, I believe, 94, 5, and 6. And he was building Brown's gas equipment, teaching people about it, and they brought nuclear waste material from the Pickering nuclear power plant, and they used Brown's gas on it, and they burnt it radioactive neutral within 2 minutes. And this technology's been around for a long time. Now, what's different, because it's monatomic, it behaves differently. I can send you a book on this stuff if you want, but you'd have to give me your address and stuff, and you can go from there. But anyway, what happens is an oxyacetylene flame is a constant explosion. It's producing heat and sending heat out. A Brown's gas flame, when it's burning, when it's being sparked, produces a flame that's 259 degrees, and it's a red flame, and you can pass your hand through it quick. But when you turn that onto a material, what it appears to do is to excite the material to a point where it changes state of matter. So you can weld two pieces of aluminum together at 1,200 and something degrees with a 259 degree flame. You can then turn that flame onto a 4-inch block of tungsten, which it will melt at 10,500 degrees. So it is as though the material is excited and the energy from exciting the material is drawn back into the gas. This seems to be the way that it works. Other curiosities with welding is you can actually weld a piece of stainless to a piece of glass, to a brick, to a piece of wood, to anything. You can weld anything to anything because each material is excited to its flash point. So you can weld the similar materials together. There's quite a lot of information and some YouTubes of Yule Brown, but that's what he's dealing with, is monoatomic oxygen and hydrogen. And the reason it looks like it can burn the nuclear material neutral is because the monoatomic hydrogen will bond with anything under the right conditions. And it will bond with particle-emitting radioactive material and render it a different substance which no longer emits particles. Because hydrogen being one in the periodic table will combine with any other material in the right conditions. So they've known this for a long time. And this was all done for 3 years here and archived in Canada and probably the U.S. because anything we get, they work together. And now you can't access any of this material. It's all disappeared. It's all gone. I mean, the process of classifying patents and so on now, last I read, is the U.S. government had sequestered some 55,000 patents since 1985. They declared them classified, whatever that's supposed to mean. And you now can't work on your own invention. So the trick now is to do the stuff, do the work, get it out on the Internet, exactly like the Tesla company's doing now, because the patent office has gone from protecting the inventor to become a collection system for the elite, an information collection system. So, I mean, things you saw in Star Trek, you can actually go and buy transparent aluminum now. If you go on the Internet looking for it, there's companies that sell transparent aluminum. And that was from a Star Trek movie back in the 70s when they were taking the whales to the future. And who's got transparent aluminum to use in their products or projects, So, I mean, the stuff's out there. The military industrial have been going ahead with all this, sequestering patents, playing with this stuff, using it. Transparent aluminum was used for windshields in tanks. That little strip windshield, that's what they used it for. Meanwhile, there could be 100,000 other beneficial uses for it, but nobody gets the information. But slowly it comes. I mean, nitinol is another product like that. It was discovered in 1961. And it's a metal. It's half nickel, half titanium, and NOL was Navy Ordnance Labs where it was discovered. So it's NITINOL. And it's a memory metal that returns to its shape. You pour hot water on it, it returns to its shape at 110,000 pounds per square inch. So if you had this hooked to a bridge, you could actually pour hot water on this wire and it would lift a military tank. Who gets to use this stuff? But slowly it's coming out again, but it's already over 50 years. So I mean, it's there. The information's there. The Internet's starting to allow us to look into this stuff. Certain people, certain places are getting it, but I mean, it's just you got to stay at it. You got to be persistent. But it's all out there, and there's more and more groups of people working with this and that and the other, and cross-contributing information, and it's all going to get there. Absolutely, all these things we've heard about, telekinesis and all the rest of it, and levitation. It's all very possible stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about some of the specific elements that have been observed in the Ormic state. Hydrogen, potassium, and gold are the three elements that you put up on the site that I put in the description, so we might as well do each one of those three. I'll give you the floor to talk about some of the interesting things about monatomic hydrogen, potassium, and gold, and then I'll see how much time we have left, and then do some other elements.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead.
what we mostly work with is gold, rhodium, and iridium. And the reason we do that, the gold comes from Dead Sea salt from Israel. The rhodium and iridium are extracted from Redmond salt from Utah, from the old basin where Salt Lake used to be when it was a big lake. And the other one we work with is the Celtic sea salt from France, because it got, laid down pre-pollution times, and it has the perfect plethora of the minerals that are in the salt that were available in the sea at the time. So that's what we work with mostly. We really haven't done any work with the hydrogen. It's been an interest of mine to keep playing with the Brown's gas, but again, it's like there's only myself and my wife, and so we just keep playing with it and try and keep getting people interested, especially the younger people, because there's a lot of really good brains out there, but I just got to get something to interest them, But and the potassium we haven't worked with at all. Again, we're learning. We certainly don't know all of this. I mean, we've made some good steps forward. I mean, probably the most significant tool that we use is dowsing. Ricky has just been an amazing dowser, because it's not like you can go to the library and pick up books on this. We have to use reason. We have to use observation, as I say, just like, teaching a child about wind. But when we run up against a brick wall, she can sit down and douse certain answers. I'll put questions and she'll douse for answers. And when we get our answers, then we'll just continue along that pathway. And as we continue along that pathway, then invariably we start getting the cross-references that start showing that we've been on the right pathway. So it's a funny way to do research, but I think it's the way of the future to do research. The internet provides certain things and physical things, but there's a whole other world beyond that, and the whole dowsing, what I call fifth dimensional world is it's there. I mean, and I've been very fortunate myself, because I get all these amazing downloads of information that come down to me in the middle of the night. What I mentioned to you about the frequency for insects, that all just came through in like an altered state about 6 days ago. So it's I wasn't even thinking about it. Bang, it just all came through, And there's all kinds of people all over the world are starting to receive all this, literally, I guess, akashic information that relates to whatever they're working on, because I guess that's the way. It's the way of the future. It's the way of us finally, ascending to the levels that we were designed to operate at. So I don't know if that's helpful, but from what we've seen, like, stay with your interest, stay with your passion, follow your path, and everything will come to you. At the levels, just ask for it to come at the levels that you can deal with, and it will. And it was Ricky that said that to me. I was getting stuff coming into me like way beyond anything I could deal with. And she said, just tell your guides, give it to you at the speed you can handle. And I guess a couple of nights later, it was my last thought before I went to sleep, and bang, it's been that way ever since. It just comes in at the levels that I can deal with, which is great. Jesus told us, ask and you will receive. It's that simple. It's all that simple. The only rule that we use is spirit makes it simple, man makes it complicated. And everything in the world is simple that needs to be, because complicated things don't last. And if you're dealing with people, regardless of what it's about, any day-to-day activity and what have you, if things start to get too complicated, stop. You're going in the wrong direction, or you're listening to someone that doesn't know what they're talking about because they cannot relate it to you. So if they can't relate it to you, they don't understand what it is that they're talking about. Save yourself a lot of time from listening to a lot of garbage. And same thing when you're on the internet and you're viewing your information and you're discerning your information. If you're listening to somebody that isn't making 100% crystal clear sense to you, don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. They're offering things beyond their level of understanding. And people just do that. I don't really know why, but people do that. And I've been aware of it for a long, long time. I try not to. I try to just keep things, where they're clear, because everybody has to discern and use the material that they require, whatever their interest is. And if you just keep it simple, it really works. So I think it's
well
helpful
said.
for anyone in general.
That's why they say, if it flows, go. If you're stuck, chuck, because life is supposed to be simpler than we make it. You're right, we do make it complicated. Something about here on your website that I'm seeing about the Ormus state of being. The atoms, says atoms are considered to be round, but in the Ormus energized state, the atoms are believed to rotate so quickly that they deform and lengthen and roughly resemble the shape of a bow tie. When this state is achieved, the atom of matter becomes a photon of light, and it also says the atoms do not bond and cannot be measured by conventional analysis equipment. The fact that they do not bond, hence the name monatomic. The thing interesting here about the name atom becoming a photon of light, it cannot bond with matter as it is no longer matter, it is light. According to mainstream science, light has no mass. So I guess that might have something to do with why monatomic stuff can make something weigh less. But that's interesting. If it has no mass, why does it make things weigh less than not weigh any more or less, if I can put it any other way?
Yeah, it's a curiosity, and we've been doing a lot of thinking about this stuff, because there's certain things that don't make sense. You come back to nature again. The atmosphere will raise a column of water 33 feet. Atmospheric pressure will hold a column of water 33 feet. In a tree, the wicking action from the phloem cells in the tree will now carry that water up to 66 feet. But what about the other 150 feet? What we think is actually happening is that the trees have an ability to select the Ormic properties that they require, which makes the water lighter, which allows that to travel to the top of a 300-foot tree. Because physically, you're back to the problem of the atmospheric pressure and the wicking effect, which only explains water getting up to 66 feet. So why? Why you go out? Why is there mountain spring when the design of a mountain is as an umbrella? When it rains, it sheds everything down the outside of it, yet you can have springs coming out of a mountain 2/3 up. We think the large amounts of Ormic material in the water are what allow the water to rise up through these mountains and create springs coming from something that has no logical source for a spring. Again, I don't know everything for sure, but you watch these things and there's no explanations, no reasonable explanations. I mean, for hundreds of years, people go out with a Y-shaped stick and they can douse the energy field coming off the water. And, why is this? It works. I mean, in the 1920s, some guy got in the government in Germany and he said, we're not sending any more dowsers down to the Congo, which was German area. Dowsers sent to the Congo had an 84% success rate. So he came up with this whole thing and said, we're going to send hydraulic engineers. The hydraulic engineers had a 20% success rate for about 14 years, and then they finally started sending dowsers back down to the Congo, and the rate went up to 84% again. So everything has energetic fields. I think part of the DNA in us that has been disconnected is our ability to perceive through these other senses. All we've been relegated to is our five senses now. But, I mean, we have all these other senses. We have, our proximity to these electric fields that different people feel to different degrees of accuracy. We have our intuition, which gives us our information long before we start to process it through our right and left brain activity. Now, you know instantly if you approach a dog, it's going to bite you, and then we reason, oh, well, yeah, I can pet that dog anyway, and then it bites you. I mean, you had the information, and you had it instantly, but you didn't pay attention to it. So we have all these other inputs to us. We have to stop telling ourselves, no, we can't do this, and start investigating these things. I mean, if everything is a frequency, which I believe it is, our sight is just a certain little snippet of wavelength of frequency, as is our hearing, as is our smell and our taste, and even our touch, because you can't touch things that are in frequencies that they're technically not there. Like you can't touch air, you can't touch, things like that. So we have these like 5 little windows that we look through into this enormous spectrum of frequency, and we judge all of frequency through our 5 little windows. I mean, it's like looking at the ocean through 5 different little portholes, and meanwhile, if you were looking down from 100 miles up like a satellite, you would see that it's very different. So we have to try and lose that and just accept things for what they are rather than what we want them to be. Then we can learn. Because if we just don't accept things, I mean, that's it. You close your mind. Any perspective is a closed mind, whether you take the perspective through your experience or your background or your religion or what have you. When you view the world through a perspective, it's like you built a little fence around your mind, and everything you're going to look at is from within that fence. So I kind of joke around. I tell people that, my perspective is to have no perspective. My belief is to have no belief. Not that I have no belief. It's just that I embrace all, because I don't know enough to pick one. So it's, my belief system is to have no belief system. And in doing that, you kind of free yourself up to look at everything. I don't know if that's something that people can use or utilize or consider. I think it works. It works for me. It works for Ricky. So it's, again, just a little tool that might be helpful.
Thanks. And I'd like to talk about the bow tie structure. Why a bow tie shape out of all the... Is that does it have something to do with infinity, maybe? Because the bow tie sort of looks like infinity. Symbols.
I don't really know. That's information that came from Hudson and from Barry Carter, and it's an anticipated shape of an atom. I mean, they can't see atoms. It's an anticipated shape of an atom. They come up with anticipated shapes because the model of the shape fits what the theory sort of is. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that's tentative. That's why I say for anybody that wants to look at that tetraionics thing, I believe that is the very first positive step forward since Newton on being able to absolutely model matter. And it doesn't look like anything in matter is spherical. It looks like everything is built from tetrahedrons and combinations of tetrahedrons. As I say, that's a very interesting video to watch because it makes absolute sense. And the guy who did this has got a very significant background in math, and he has now found, because you have this modeling structure, you now have an avenue to see where certain aspects of Einstein's math and various other people's math either falls short or has loopholes in it, because, the people doing theoretical on the edge math really don't know what it is they're proving. They're just it's like nailing a board on top of an end of another board, and you keep walking out this pathway. So, but there's nothing to relate the pathway to. Now, with the tetraionics, there is something to relate the pathway to. It's now the end goal of structure. So this is, I have a feeling this may be possibly the most important thing that's ever been posted on the net, or may ever be. It's that important, and again, it's another thing where you need people looking. But I think using this structure, we will be able to map absolutely accurately where the Ormic materials will fit in the currently existing periodic table. And, again, there's so many other things. Like Ricky was dowsing material we got from spring water in New York State. And she will douse over a periodic table to determine the mineral contents of the water. Sometimes there's 30 and 40 minerals in this stuff. Anyway, on one occasion, she dowsed element 106. Now, I was always told that anything beyond 92 was man-made elements. And I thought, well, how can this be? And the general scenario for man-made elements was the fact that things were created artificially, getting up into americium and all the rest of the stuff they used in their atomic weapons and so on. And how could she possibly find element 110? How could she find element 110? Anyway, I researched it, and it's a material called darmstadtium. It was discovered in 1995 in Germany, in the city of Darmstadt. That's what it is. Anyway, so what she found was this material in her dowsing. I said, well, it can't be. Leave it alone for a few days. So about 4 or 5 days later, she started on the whole sequence of dowsing again and came back up with this element, 110, darmstadtium. And she didn't know anything about, elements beyond 92. So we started looking into this thing a little bit, and what's happened, I think what we came across is something that defies all logic or everything we've been told again. What I think has happened is that any element above 92 exists naturally all over the place in its Ormic state. So it is not chemically active, it is stable, and it doesn't come apart like beta particle or alpha particle emissions like these unstable radioactive materials. So we think there could be natural element 110, and whenever they discovered this, they were firing hydrogen particles through an accelerator and may or may not have hit a normally stable 110 atom in its Ormic condition and smashed that to pieces, and they got 2 read-offs from it. They got one particle had a 3-second half-life and the other one had a 3-minute half-life. But that was all they did. And they said, oh, good, we discovered another element, or we made another element. So from I was a kid, I always wondered, how can you smash 2 things together to create something? It didn't make sense in my head. And I think what's happening is that these Ormic state materials exist. We could have elements up to 600 or more, who knows? And anyway, so these things are, maybe all there. And we have no way of telling, and nobody's looking, and nobody's trying to measure. So, all these things could all be there.
Thanks. Want to talk for a moment about what happens if someone consumes Ormic elements, because, first of all, there's some pictures on your website showing a plant that was a walnut tree that was applied Ormics, and the walnuts seem to grow a lot better and bigger than the ones that wasn't. But actually, that's not the point of my question. This is about eating Ormic elements, because I seem to remember Jim Mars talking about how if you consume some sort of an Ormic element, maybe gold or maybe some other one, it's possible to do this with, it can help cause some sort of dimensional travel. Do you have any idea what he's talking about? You can enter other dimensions by consuming monatomic elements?
I think what happens is when we consume Ormic materials, which we should be getting in our food, And when we are consuming these materials, we are simply bringing our body back to the levels where it should be. We're all operating in deficit because of the AMFs on one side, and on the other side, the depleted soil that's growing the food that we're eating. We have the mechanism in our digestive system. We need copper, we need iron, we need magnesium. We need these metals. When we eat food with metallic particles, our digestive system dissolves these into metallic salts at pH 1.5, and then after the digestion's complete, our food material then passes the duodenum into the small intestine. The duodenum injects pH 10 plus material, which causes an acid-alkali reaction, which releases the metals as the white powders. We're actually the mechanism to release the materials we require for our system by our digestive system. And allopathic medicine doesn't look like that. They say, oh, well, that shows your stomach acid doesn't dissolve your intestines. But ask yourself, if that was the case, why wouldn't the nature have just built the intestines out of the same material? No. We need the acid-alkali reaction to release the Ormic conditioned material, or the Ormus state material, from the metallic particles. So we actually contain that mechanism. And then you go to the drugstore and you'll find that the largest shelf is antacids. Now they've got people drinking alkaline water. So all these things start to disturb the acid-alkali balance from the stomach to the liver. And as soon as you interfere with that, and you're not getting the Ormic materials that you require because you're messing with the digestive system, it starts to throw everything askew. So, I mean, again, nature is doing it correctly. But whenever you eat food grown from depleted fields, for example, something regrown every year, roots are acidic. They go out and they dissolve inorganic material, absorb them, and now it becomes organic material. If the roots can't reach this material, it can't dissolve it and incorporate it. That's where we're getting these depleted fields. So we're getting them in minerals they know about. We're also losing the Ormic minerals that they don't know about. So this is the whole thing, you know. But, anyway.
Yes. Anything else?
Yeah, I'm getting kicked out of where I am here.
Okay. Well, just so you know, we got about 11 minutes left after I guess we might as well let you finish off on this final subject if you want to take the final 11 minutes to talk about it. But the subject is ancient societies using monatomic elements. If you can specifically name specific ancient cultures from antiquity that used monatomic elements and also name which specific monatomic elements they used, then please do that. You've got 11 minutes to do that. I'll give you the full 11 minutes.
The best thing that I can say is to look at Lawrence Gardner's video, because he actually believes that the Ark of the Covenant was full of Ormus gold. And the curiosities in the Bible, whenever they were carrying the Ark, the Bible talks about people being lifted off the ground by the staffs that they were carrying the Ark with. So there's your anti-gravity properties. They also talk about if an individual approached it who was not a priest or a royal, they would be struck dead by lightning. And this is what happened, apparently a few times. Barry Carter did an interesting thing a few years ago. He had a circle of 25 people. And what they did is they had a battery and a ground. And 25 people in a circle held hands, and the first person touched the battery. And what happened was that the first and last people got a shock. And then whenever they substituted the battery for charged Ormus water, what happened was when they completed the circuit, everybody in the circle got a shock. And they did this several times, over and over. And each time they substituted, they got the same results. So the Ormic material is either a different form of electrical nature, or it is a different energy substance altogether. So the thing is, if the priests and the pharaohs were taking Ormic materials, they could walk up to the Ark of the Covenant, which they did, and no one got killed. Yet when a soldier went up, he got struck dead. So it's a different thing. So the priest and the pharaoh were in resonance with the material that was possibly in the ark. And because they were in resonance with it, they didn't get struck dead. It's like an energy differential, you know? So, anyway, I think that's what was going on there. So it's talked about through the Bible. So if you consider the ark may have been full of Ormus gold or a combination of Ormic materials, it explains this behavior. And there's probably other aspects of this as well. The Egyptians, they produced these materials. But again, a lot of this comes from the Anunnaki. If you start to look, through a lot of the archaeological sites, you start to find the Egyptians with large heads. And the farther back they go, the larger heads they've got. Now, was this a product of the Anunnaki? It's hard to say. But, it's there. In China, there was the Dropa people, and the Chinese have found, I think, 69 bodies of these little people that are like 50% head. And they found them all in 1938, and then the war broke out, and research never happened. But, that's out there, and they found 750 stone tablets with them as well. Many of them, they've already been decoded. So there's lots of stuff gone on here before. And, we've got a lot more information that we need to, take in on all of this. We're barely scratching the surface of all this stuff. But, again, if you keep looking at the anomalies, the answers are all in the anomalies. And once you collect enough of these things together, they start to paint the picture. It's just we're collecting it a pixel at a time, So...
Yeah, a little bit at a time, right? Eventually, if we gather enough, we'll finally fill the puzzle. And with that being said, I guess I might give you the last of the show to discuss the subject of what do you see for the future in regards to how humans will be able to utilize Ormic elements? Do you see that our consciousness will rise and we'll be able to use them more than we used to, or do you see a future where the Ormic element science will remain suppressed? I think it's going to be the former, since we're on a positive timeline at the moment, according to many people. But the future of Ormic elements and how humans will use them, learn about them and all, what do you have to say about that? You've got 6 minutes and 6.5 minutes.
Yeah, I think it's really good. About 3 years ago, I had one of these dreams. And, because you hear about the Golden Age, right? You hear about all this, there's stories, et cetera, been going on forever and ever about the Golden Age. And I had one of these, I don't think it was a dream, it was an out-of-body thing. It had that different feel, I've had them quite a few times. And there was one person, one entity, and everything else was white. And I was there to ask a question, and I asked the question. I said, what is the Golden Age? And I got an answer. There was a slight pause in the answer, and the answer was the knowledge of gold. That's it. 4 words. So I believe that's correct, because I believe that's simple, and Spirit makes everything simple. That's right. And that's part of what just keeps us reinforced in getting this stuff out of there. We believe Ormus gold is actual consciousness itself. We believe that Ormus gold, if there is a God particle, that's what it is. That's what we think it is. And if Ormus gold is in every living thing and every stone and every crystal, these could be the nerve endings of God, because they say God is everywhere. And we always think that it's much smaller scale than that. But what if it's every molecule? And I can see it, because what gold is a communications media. Ormus gold is a communications media. It's like electricity in your computer or light. They're eventually going to shift over to light computers, but it's already light. We've seen this when we've made Ormus at home. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes we drop the precipitate, and the precipitate will actually be an inch deeper on one side of these gallon jars, and we've seen this in 6 jars simultaneously when there's a full moon. So the Ormic material is drawn to the light of the full moon. And we think that that may be the reason for Rudolf Steiner and the biodynamic gardening, because when you plant your seeds at full moon, if that light is drawing the Ormic material up to the top of the soil and you plant your seeds in that, they are going to absorb more of the Ormic material, and they've got 100 years of photographs of bigger plants, healthier plants, bigger yields by following the protocol of planting your seeds at full moon. You know, so I mean, these little things keep showing up again. I mean, there's no really good explanation for the 29-day tidal cycle until you figure the amount of light reflected from the moon changes. The moon's gravity doesn't, so I mean, that can't be the cause of the 29-day tidal cycle. Yet when we drop Ormus precipitate, we get about 1/6 or 1/7 the volume from seawater. So if 1/6 or 1/7 the volume of the entire 71% of the Earth covering, you know, the ocean covering the Earth is drawn by the moonlight, that explains the 29-day tidal cycle. You know, I mean, it just explains so many things when you start looking at it through this. You know, so it can be pushed by magnetic force, and it can be pulled by various frequencies of light. We had another occasion where we made Ormus at home, and they're packed in our little 8-ounce blue bottles, and the precipitate settles down to maybe, 15% of the bottle overnight. We had a big lightning storm come through that night, and the 6 bottles closest to the door of our dining room table, where the door was open, I got up and watched the storm and woke me up. And in the morning, all of those bottles had about 85% precipitate, while all of the ones that were sheltered were all about 15%. So the light from the lightning actually seemed to increase the amount of material. Ricky checked it on a radionics machine, and that material exhibited a charge that was 4 times as great as the regular Ormus, and it stepped down every day for about 8 days until it settled back to normal. So, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff going on here. The problem's getting more people to look at it, and invariably when you start talking to people conventionally trained, they're trained more what not to learn and what to look at, They're not trained to think, they're trained to become a cog in the economic wheel. So this is sort of, the more you investigate into this, there's just more and more and more and more, and it's no end to it, But
yeah, and I want to give out your site quickly. Why don't you quickly give out your website so people will be able to buy your products if they ever want it?
Sure. Our website is humanagold.com.
Spell that.
That's HUMANNAGOLD.com.
Yeah, you put 2 N's, human, and then another N, and then an A, and then the word gold.
Well,
yeah, just so.
Hu is the Eckankar word for God. Mana is from the Bible, so it's humanagold.com.
Harry, I never noticed that the word mana was in there. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah. What is mana?
It was originally hyphenated, except the web guys couldn't do anything with hyphens, apparently. So.
Right. Well, that's cool. Right. Well, hopefully this will encourage people to buy some of your products. I guess I might want to give it a try at some point. But we have, unfortunately, come to the end of the show, so I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell all of my guests, and would have been great if Ricky could have been on, but it was not to be. But Dave, you are a fascinating individual. I never covered this subject on my show before in detail, so it was great to be able to discuss a new subject. And believe me, I will make sure I spread this information far and wide on YouTube and other mediums, so this information gets out to the public. But I would like to point out that one of my goals with this radio show is to get as many different people on the show as possible before I start giving any one specific guest double dips. And that does mean, I regret to say, that I will probably not be asking you to come on my show again, but that's only because I need to give thousands of other fascinating individuals a chance at some glory on my show. But believe me...
You do what you know is the right thing to do.
And believe me, the trolls on YouTube always pick on me for telling my guests at the end of the show that I won't be letting them on again. They say, what a douchebag. How could he say that? They never take into account the fact that it's because I want to keep getting different people on to keep my show impartial and informative. Yeah. That's the trolls for you. Yeah. But it was great having you on. I guess take care, and maybe I'll see you at another conference. I remember meeting you at MUFON. Maybe I'll see you at the next conference there or some other conference in the future.
Yeah, we're going to be at the Dowsers in Vermont in first weekend in June, and we're going to be at the Awaken and Power Show in Troy, Michigan in April, and I don't know, we have to see where we go from then. We're also doing a talk on the 10th in Toronto at the Toronto Dowsers at the Estonian Center, and that information's on our webpage too, if that's helpful for anybody.
All right, thanks a lot. So take care.
Much,
Namaste.
Namaste.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, folks, the end of this show. Next week we will be having, hope I can pronounce his name right here, Samir Osmaganic, something to that effect. He was recommended by one of the people who I met at the MUFON conference, but couldn't make my show, so she decided to contact him to be her substitute. So he will be talking about the Bosnian pyramids in Europe and some other structures, I guess, throughout the world that ancient astronaut theorists would be fascinated by. So Samir Osmanagic, something to that effect, will be my guest on the show next week. And by the way, want to point out a couple things, folks. I'll be back on Facebook on Groundhog Day. Have been banned from posting to groups until then by the Facebook Nazis who don't seem to like me using Facebook to enter the Matrix, to beat the Matrix. And I did make a website on blogger.com. The site is natureofrealityradio.blogspot.com. I archived all my shows on that site, and I'll archive this one too. So I got that up. Hopefully I'll have my own official website for Nature of Reality Radio. But without further ado, namaste, everyone. This is Andrew Fisher signing off.